War. Since the early days of mankind, war has ravaged across the globe. In the name of good or evil, to attack or defend, war has created empires and destroyed nations. Since the time of Alexander the Great, results on the battlefield had much to do with the great generals who led their armies to victory or followed them into exile. A great military mind was able to see an opportunity where others saw only a lost cause. A great general was able to develop a plan of attack that would outwit an opponent or respond to an offensive action with speed and agility. In the 20th century came the greatest war the world had ever known. A war between many nations that pitted armor, aircraft, and weaponry on a scale unimaginable by the armies of the world. World War II. In this war, many called greatness. Leaders emerged from small country towns and large urban areas. No nation was blessed with military leaders than the United States of America. Generals who rose to the ranks to lead troops to battle. Men who were born to greatness, and men who had greatness thrust upon them. This is their story. The generals of World War II. They were legends in their own time and remain so today. Their lives were an inspiration, and their deeds the stuff of history. Here now, the story of General George S. Patton. In 1942, he set forth, like some warrior of old, to lead and inspire vast forces of men in North Africa and Sicily. At a pace never equaled, his Third Army swept across the continent of Europe. No American leader was more colorful and more successful. General George S. Patton, Jr., dedicated to glory and to victory. One of the generals of American history. From his earliest years, this lad believed he was going to be General George S. Patton, Jr. His imagination was stirred by stories of great heroes of the past, told by his father. His military career began at Virginia Military Institute. At West Point, he proved himself a model cadet and an early leader among his peers. He established the first football team for soldiers, an action that would grow to a powerhouse of national champions and long-standing tradition. World War I. Convinced that this ponderous vehicle would someday come into its own, he studied it, rode into battle, became a hero alongside it. Our first tank commander, he was with the weapon that symbolized his driving, overwhelming personality. After the war, the tank school at Fort Meade. Two officers here shared a deep military interest, Ike Eisenhower and George Patton. The fierce expression, his get-up at masquerades reflected some deep instinct to play the role of warrior or fighter. His wife joined in, sensing that even in fun, these roles suited her soldier husband. The time came, as it had before, when the clothing of battle was to be worn by millions of Americans. Two Axis spearheads were headed east. In the north, von Bock was pursuing his way through the Ukraine to the Caucasus. In the south, Rommel was driving toward the Egyptian border. These two spearheads were intended to meet in Iran and head eastward toward India. In the Orient, Japan had occupied the coast of China, the East Indies, Malaysia, and Burma in the preparation for the drive westward through India. If these two enemy spearheads were allowed to meet, Russia, except for their remote Arctic ports, would be completely isolated. Japanese raw materials and German production would be combined. The peoples of Europe, Asia, and Africa, 7/8 of the world's population would be enslaved. By morning, a decision, both bold and revolutionary. Bold because in this, our darkest hour, we dared to take the offensive. Revolutionary because that offensive was conceived, planned, and executed by the peoples of two nations. The time and the place had been agreed upon. North Africa. Code name for the combined operation was Acrobat. Why North Africa? What was the plan called Acrobat? The convoy from America was heading east, the one from Britain heading south. West of Gibraltar, the convoy would divide. For 12 hours, the two would go opposite directions. Then the second would reverse its course and follow the first, passing Gibraltar 24 hours behind. Thus, with clock-like precision, the combined operations would begin simultaneous landings at Casablanca, Oran, Algiers. Casablanca to protect our flank against attack through Spanish Morocco. Oran and Algiers to secure bases from which to press eastward. Then, the occupation of Tunisia, from which we could cut Rommel's supply lines across the Mediterranean. Next, trap and destroy Rommel's Africa Corps between our Allied forces and the British 8th Army. Thus, one arm of the Axis pincer would be amputated, and supply lines around the Cape of Good Hope would be shortened by half through winning control of the Mediterranean. North Africa would be under Allied control, with bases from which to stab at the heart of the Axis citadel. Those were the main objectives of the plan called Acrobat. In both convoys, the men kept fit, now knowing the task that lay ahead. For most of them, this voyage would be a new experience. They'd never been so far from home before. Command of American forces for the invasion of North Africa, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. The enemy knew nothing until the last possible moment, when the first half of the convoy from Britain steamed past the fortress of Gibraltar. It was at night that the ships passed through the straits. The time had been carefully chosen, for here in narrow waters, attack seemed certain. Aboard ship and on the rock, everyone saw too, but the ships moved steadily on. It was as though, for the moment, the enemy's sword had fallen from his hand through indecision. This time, it was in Rome and in Berlin that the lights burned all night. For the first time since the wars began, somebody else was called. Before the enemy could collect its wits and its forces, our ships, as planned, off their appointed destination. Events planned 4 months earlier moved to a climax. Off Casablanca stood the convoy from America. General Patton to the troops aboard ship.
Soldiers and sailors, it is not known whether the French African will contest our landing, but all resistance by whomever offered must be destroyed. However, when any of the French soldiers seek to surrender, you will accept it and treat them with the respect due a brave opponent and future ally. Remember, the French are not Nazis or Japs.
November the 8th, 1942. Orders of the day. The words signifies that all vigorous and offensive action against the enemy. A large shown in a vertical position at night signifies that the enemy has agreed to the terms of the Allies. With words, play ball, the fight was on in Casablanca. Meanwhile, in Algiers, our landing craft also met fire from shore batteries, which was soon silenced by ships of the British Navy. Here, too, the French troops ashore were asked by radio to indicate a friendly attitude by throwing their searchlight beams vertical. It wasn't long before, here and there along the coast, searchlights were seen pointing to the heavens. As dawn broke, fighter planes from Gibraltar, fitted with extra fuel tanks, took off without even waiting to hear whether the landing fields at Algiers had been captured. By 7 a.m., resistance at Algiers was finished. British and American troops had landed east and west of the city, penetrated the area, and held the heights from all vantage points. In Algiers on that famous November the 8th was Admiral Jean Delon, French Vice Chief of State under Marshal Patton. It was after consultation with him that the French commanding general agreed to surrender the city. In Oran, American paratroops and airborne infantry flown from Britain 1,500 miles away had landed to capture airfields, while other American troops had poured ashore on the beaches protected by the British Navy. Here, as in Algiers, the hours. But at Cannes, the battle still raged. Shore batteries and the heavy guns of the French battleship Jean Bart, several destroyers and gunboats put out a devastating pile. Gunnery from American ships, coupled with precision bombing, silenced those guns. Striking north and south of the city, shock troops cut the railways. other lines of communication, then converged upon the town. 2 days later, the Germans invaded and occupied France, whereupon Admiral Delon, declaring Patton governor of the Allies and himself the chief of state, ordered the cessation of hostilities. Proof of the size of our landing, German armistice conditions were in the city. Their job, to blow North Africa of materials and products. The people of North Africa were evidently not sorry to see them go. One of the outstanding features of this campaign was Patton's bold leadership and the impression he left on French and Arab. Long-range plans could now be discussed, plans which would cast America's toughest general in a leading role. Meanwhile, a battle was raging to the east in Tunisia. His tankers, whom he roused to a pitch of fighting spirit, joined the fighting. Allies remarkable military gifts, his judgment, his sure instinct for what the enemy would do. Patton set a tank trap for Rommel. Rommel marched right into it. His 10th Panzer Division lost half its 60 tanks, retired, and never attempted a counterattack. The Americans blitzed their way into Bizerte. The British smashed right through the center to capture Tunis. Then a British army column crashed across the Cape to Hammamet. Another British column raced around the tip of the Cape to prevent any evacuation. The whole Axis mass was split into 4 segments. The end came quickly. By tens, by hundreds, trucks and behind their bands. The greatest mass surrender of fully equipped troops in modern history. Allied losses totaled nearly 70,000 men, dead, wounded, and missing. 35,000 British, 18,000 Americans, 15,000 French. But for every man the Allies lost, the Germans had lost 5. And at the end, 15 full divisions, 266,000 of Germany's best men laid down their arms. With this victory came the end of the Axis Empire in Africa. His reputation grew. He looked forward eagerly to his next campaign. He'd been selected to command a new army, the 7th, slated for the conquest of Sicily. An order of the day from Patton to his men. Remember that we as attackers have the initiative. We must retain this tremendous advantage by always attacking, rapidly, ruthlessly, viciously, without rest. Keep punching. God is with us. We shall win. Attack. Attack. And when in doubt, attack again. Patton's major principle for fighting battles or a war. His chief mission, he believed, was to arouse the morale of his men. He urged them on, certain that speed and boldness could shorten the war. Like British General Bernard Montgomery, known as Monty, he believed in showmanship. But he was aware that if the act could not be carried off in fine style, the men would see through it. Both leaders used every means to inspire the troops of their vast command. Sicily proved to be a memorable campaign. Sound tactics and a fight won the island in just 8 days. The Supreme Allied commander paid a visit. Passionately involved in the war, and Patton had acquired a reputation for being tempestuous. Sometimes there was a question as to his role in the invasion of Europe. Then, his whereabouts carefully concealed from the German high command, he appeared in Great Britain. New troops heard him in an introductory speech and called him Old Blood and Guts. Others referred to him as the Old Man. But he knew more about France than any man alive. On D-Day, behind Bradley's First Army, another army assembled, Patton's Third. With plenty of armor, this outfit was like its commander, fast, hard-hitting, spirited, spectacular. From the Cherbourg Peninsula began a rolling advance, an all-out smashing attack, a Patton version of a German blitzkrieg. Saint-Méroux, the beginning of a long list of towns occupied by Germans one day, liberated the next. At the head of a vast crusading army, Patton fulfilled a destiny he had dreamed of since early youth. The attacks were now in all directions at once, toward the south, and north, and east, toward Germany. The third advanced wave. The enemy was fear. Patton told his men, "In the last 2 weeks, the Third has advanced farther and faster than any other army in history. My intention is to move farther and faster still." Outrunning its maps, the Third Army crossed the Seine. In Patton's words, he was touring France with an army. He was everywhere at once, covering the great distances within his command. His use of light aircraft exemplified his eagerness to adopt any new means of increasing efficiency. Throughout, the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Army Air Force gave Patton's troops close air support. The astounding advances went on and on. Patton saw nothing in the way. He was ready to push on into the heart of Germany. Struggling to keep up with his fast-moving front was a miraculous supply effort known as the Red Ball Express. But now, Patton's supply lines were strained to the utmost. Winter was approaching. Other Allied armies were feeling the pinch. The Third was ordered to hold up, to take the defensive. Nothing but defeat itself could have made the general more depressed. This was a difficult time for an army built to roll. The tension for Patton was finally eased. He was assured by his old friend that the Third would eventually receive adequate supplies to resume what they had begun. Patton urged his leaders to try the morale during the offensive. He himself delivered the pep talks for which he was famous, giving credit, instilling pride, urging men to even greater deeds. Then, the green light. In 400 years, the fortress city of Metz had withstood every assault. But Metz was no cheap victory. The fall of this highly regarded fortification bore out Patton's belief that no defense position had ever been successfully defended. With General Walker at the front, new plans now. A great drive toward the highly reputed Siegfried Line. But an instinct of what the enemy will do alerted him to a new danger. Field Marshal von Rundstedt struck with 20 divisions on a 40-mile front, the Battle of the Bulge. Patton was asked to speed what help he could. Could it be 3 days? I asked. Patton's armored troops would make it in 2, dashing 1 mile over icy roads to Bastogne. Then, at the heart of a major attack, Patton's concentrated armored power. The Nazis fell on the offensive. They were never to regain. The Third broke the back of the German offensive and began preparations for their own. Always, Patton pushed them harder than anyone had pushed them before. Always, the results were more than he might have expected. For a commander who was so obviously a winner, they could do the impossible. In recognizing and exalting the heroic qualities of his men. And they sensed his sincerity when he used words like duty, patriotism, and loyalty. To him, these words had real meaning. The Siegfried Line. In Patton's words, this monument to the stupidity of men cracked easily. The famous Third was now on the loose again, on a spring rampage that would bring the war to a close before summer. Again, Patton's army was going beyond expectations. The enemy believed Patton would pause at the Rhine. He went right across. Now, along a wide front, his division fought toward the final. Always, he took time out to give credit where it really belonged, to the men. To Private Harold A. Harmon, the Medal of Honor. Exalting sacrifice, Patton never dwelt long on the horrors of war. But as his Third Army overran concentration camps in Germany, he saw horror of a new kind. Victories southwest to link up with Soviet forces in the Danube Valley. It was over. Victory was complete, and Patton was a major factor in crushing the Nazis and bringing them to the peace table. On his return, Americans showed their gratitude. In General Pershing's words, "It didn't hurt America to have a general so bold that he was dangerous." Los Angeles went in its reception, with General Doolittle, whose 8th Air Force in Europe did so much.
Although no individual won the war, we're fortunate in having one here tonight with us who had a large part in winning the war. I'm pleased and proud to have been privileged to fight by the side of General George Patton.
Your Honor, Mayor, General Doolittle, soldiers, ladies and gentlemen, coming over here, there was a very great lesson. The first 4 hours, we passed over a destroyed land, utterly destroyed. Those who have not seen it do not know what hell looks like from the top. That's what Germany looks like. That's what Austria looks like. That's what any place that the 8th Air Force and the 3rd Army worked on looks like. So much this, that from Brest to various southern Germany and Austria, whose names I can't pronounce, but whose places I have removed. The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command and the 8th Air Force is marked. by more than 40,000 white crosses, 40,000 dead Americans.
Few realized how deeply he felt about it. In Germany, with no more battles to win, Patton was on the playing field. Again, he saw the fighting spirit, the will to win, a quality he loved and admired, and which epitomized himself. Struggle was the test of a man. War, the supreme struggle, provided the highest test. He had expected his own death spectacular. This one prediction was more mistaken than of any battle. He died of injuries received in an accident months after the end of the war. The burial among the Third Army who had fallen in the Battle of the Bulge. Personality lives on at West Point. He lived for action and glory and reached the heights in serving his country as one of the greatest generals in American history.